The Three Martini Lunch is brought to you in part today by 4 Patriots. Head to 4patriots.com/martini to see all their great deals, including savings right now on the Leafy Greens Hydro Garden Seed Kit, the 4 Patriots Bountiful Green Plant Food, the Sauna Wrap Therapeutic Blanket, and the Solar Go Fridge with solar panel. But the big news is that the deluxe 3-month survival food kits are back in stock. You want to be prepared for whenever disaster strikes, and these 3-month food kits are a big way to stay prepared. 688 total servings per kit, or about 8 per day, about 1,500 calories per day, and now even more delicious recipes for things like pancakes, mac and cheese, spaghetti, and much more. Disaster-resistant packaging, hand-packed right here in the U.S., 100% satisfaction guaranteed. You can stash food away and be confident that when a disaster strikes, you and your family will be ready. Go to 4patriots.com/martini to get the deluxe 3-month survival food kit and the peace of mind you deserve. Plus, get free shipping on orders over $97. That's the number 4, patriots.com/martini. That's 4patriots.com/martini.
Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Corombos of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. 3 Martinis coming up.
Hey, really glad you're with us for the Thursday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. And as promised, Jim Garrity is back on the podcast. He's not actually back home yet. He's still in Kansas City after what I understand has been a fantastic visit. Thanks to Scott Bertram and Inez Stetman for filling in for Jim over the past few days. But Jim, how has KC treated you? How much barbecue have you actually had?
3 times my own body weight, roughly. They're going to have to roll me back. The plane is not going to be able to take off because of the additional weight. No, it's been great. We had more than 150 people come out at the Kansas City Public Library on Tuesday night. A bunch of people came up and told me how much they enjoy the podcast. And yesterday I was over at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. Professor Bruce, a daily listener. So thank you for listening. And for people who have asked why you weren't here. And so I'll have to see if I can get NRI and the Show Me Institute to bring us out for a taping there. No, I feel like Kansas City is, like kind of an under-publicized, delightful little city. And every time I tell the locals that, they're like, yes, don't tell anyone. We like it the way it is. We don't want Californication. We don't want all kinds of other folks coming out here. So pretend I didn't say that, listeners.
No, Kansas City's been great. Even when their sports teams aren't dominating like the Chiefs are at the moment. They've always been very faithful fans and nice fans. Everybody who's ever gone to a Chiefs game there that I've ever known has said that they were very, very well treated by the hometown crowd, regardless of the outcome of the game. So let's go ahead and dig into our 3 martinis today so we can get you to the airport. Starting with Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman. This guy continues to defy expectations, but this position has been one he's had now for over 6 months, so it's not coming as a surprise. But the fact that he's willing to stand up in a way that most in his party won't is certainly nice to see. He flags a New York Post story about Hamas publishing a propaganda video of an Israeli-American hostage named Hirsch Goldberg Poland, who's been missing since October 7th, and now he doesn't have one of his arms, which tells you the kind of treatment that people have received at the hands of Hamas. And so Fetterman says October 7th, Hamas maimed and took this man hostage, using him for brutal propaganda. 200 days later, we cannot forget. This entire tragedy could end if Hamas would release every last hostage and surrendered. So that's about as succinct as you can get it. And when we're going to be talking about these stupid protests a little bit later in the podcast, Jim, it's good to have that kind of clarity. And it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. If you're going to be talking that clearly and that correctly, we're going to give you a shout out.
Greg, I hear that. And this is a good martini with a little bit of a bad aftertaste, because you hear that moral clarity from Fetterman, that directness, that bluntness. And I sit and think, why can't we hear that from the President of the United States? Why can't we hear that from anybody in the administration? Why was it that earlier this week, and this really stuck in my craw, it was one of the days I wish we were on the podcast when, Biden was the first time on camera Monday. He said, I condemn the anti-Semitic protests. That's why I've set up a program to deal with that. I also condemn those who don't understand what's going on with the Palestinians and how they're being, the idea that, like, almost in the very same breath, Biden had to come out and say, oh, and the Palestinians have it bad too. And it's as if our entire U.S. foreign policy has been reoriented to win votes in Dearborn, Michigan. Now, over the weekend, there had been an issued statement from Biden that hit all the right notes and was saying all the right things about the campus protests. But I have again, I can't prove it, but it seems like common sense based on what we see from Biden. I don't think Biden looks very closely at all the written statements that get put out under his name. If you look on the White House website, they're putting out stuff, proclamations all the time. I just have a very hard time believing Biden reviews them very closely. So when we see the appropriate statement from the White House denouncing protests that turn into anti-Semitic, anti-Jew rallies, like I'd rather have that than not have that. But this is coming from some White House spokesman. This is Biden on camera, off the cuff, the first chance to get what he really thinks from the horse's mouth. I used that phrase and people said, Jim, it's not the mouth. But all right, Biden, show us what you got. And the very first thing he says is, and the Palestinians have it bad too. And just to me, it says that in the end, we've seen Biden get angry. We know Fetterman is angry about the hostages. We know how the only thing that makes Fetterman angrier than the hostages is Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey, where he's constantly willing to remind us about the indictments. And so it's one of the things where Fetterman has absolute moral clarity and isn't going to get, I'm sure he's got criticisms of Israel here and there, but he's like, no, let's remember how this started. He's very crystal clear on that. And we don't get any of that from the President of the United States. So once again, good job, John Fetterman. Thank you. And I just wish he could rub off more on some of his fellow Democrats.
Dislikes Bob Menendez, and pants also are some things that he doesn't enjoy. But in terms of Biden, I mean, it was kind of overused in reaction to his comment, but I'm going to put a little bit of a twist on it. A lot of people are saying this is his very fine people on both sides comment, but in this case, I guess it would be not so fine folks on both sides in terms of people.
I remember those
protests
people getting harassed. They're not perfect either.
Right, exactly. No, just failing and flailing, I think is how you would describe the president on this, and it's not good in any way, shape, or form. But I'll tell you what is good, and that's Fast Growing Trees, the biggest online nursery in the United States with more than 10,000 different kinds of plants and more than 2 million happy customers. They have everything you could possibly want: fruit trees, palm trees, evergreens, houseplants, and so much more.
Whatever you're interested in, they have it for you. You can find the perfect fit for your climate and space. And Fast Growing Trees makes it easy to order online, and your plants will be shipped directly to your door in just 1 or 2 days. And along with their 30-day Alive and Thrive guarantee, they offer free plant consultation forever.
Yeah, I mean, we endorse a number of different products on the Three Martini Lunch, and I genuinely love the plants and trees we get from Fast Growing Trees. They come in great condition. They're easy to take care of. They help you if you have any problems. We've enjoyed our big plants. We've enjoyed our spices. It's just a great variety, and you can't really go wrong, especially with how well they take care of you. Fast Growing Trees has the best deals online, up to half off on select plants and other deals. And listeners to the Three Martini Lunch get an additional 15% off their first purchase when using the code Martini at checkout. That's an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com and using the code Martini at checkout. Fastgrowingtrees.com, code Martini. Offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. All right, Jim, on to our bad or really a crazy here, but it's probably both. And the protests continue at certain campuses. Columbia was ground zero, and it's still going there. They've spread across the country, but so have the crackdowns. UT Austin and USC certainly seem to have more of a response to disrupt the illegal occupation of campus. But this clip is making the rounds. It's kind of gone viral. This is a Columbia student who dipped downtown to go to the NYU protests related to the Palestinians and the Middle East. And she got interviewed on camera. And boy, Jim, I don't know if this sums up most of the students, but I have a feeling it sums up more than the mainstream media would admit or the American people probably have an idea about. But listen to this exchange.
And what would you say is the main goal with tonight's protest?
I think the goal is just showing our support for Palestine and demanding that NYU stops. I honestly don't know all of what NYU's doing.
Is there something that NYU's doing?
I really don't know. I'm pretty sure they're... Do you know what NYU's doing? About what? About Israel. Why are we protesting here?
Palestine will be free!
I wish I was more educated. I'm not either.
Oh.
I came from Columbia. I was there up at Columbia, and we came down. They said NYU students needed our support. So I came down. I heard there's lots of cops. Some people were saying it was getting dangerous.
I heard there were lots of cops, and I go to Columbia. So this is not a great admissions video for Columbia University, and they've certainly put out a lot of not good videos this week. Jim, my colleague Sarah Carter was reporting for Fox News, and she ran into a person with a Palestine will be free from the river to the sea poster, and she asked her, okay, so what river and what sea? And just like that survey we talked about months ago, she had no idea. And so these people, they're out, they're part of this cause, and they really have no clue. Yeah, well, it rhymes. So that's why we're chanting it. We're not getting wrapped up in the details of which river, which sea, I saw something this morning, and I mentioned it in today's Morning Jolt, and it really is also worth perspective because, most of these protests are we hate Israel. A lot of it spills over into we hate Jews, which is why they get together around campus Hillels, they get together around synagogues, they get together around JCC's organization. They could go to the Israeli consulate to the United Nations. They could go down to Washington to the Israeli embassy. They're not doing that. They just, we found Jewish people. That's close enough. We're going to protest them. But there's this journalist writer named Jack Rains. Apparently he's a Columbia student. And he decided to look into what exactly are they protesting and what is it they want Columbia to do? Well, by the way, Columbia's got an endowment of $13 billion. And unsurprisingly, that endowment they invest in the stock market. So he looks it up. Columbia owns $277,000 out of this, remember, $13 billion in a BlackRock corporate bond ETF, electronically traded fund that has of companies that do business in Israel. They're not necessarily invested in, certainly nothing in the Israeli government. You don't invest in a government. They don't really even have a lot invested in Israeli firms or Israeli businesses or something like that. And as I said, it's $277,000 out of $13 billion. That's what they want them to divest. I would not say anybody should divest out of Israel. I think we should, support them. And this is, I also, by the way, you take out your money out. It's not like Israel's going to say, okay, Hamas gets to win. It's not, we're not going to try to shoot down the Iranian rockets coming in. We're not going to, Hamas, do whatever you want. Palestinians, that's okay. No, that's not going to have that effect. But the argument is always, we'll divest from Israel. This will force Israel to change its tactics and things like that. Always implausible. But when you're talking about such ludicrously small sum, $277,000, Netanyahu won't get out of bed for that kind of, that's just not a big enough factor in the Israeli economy to force Israel's hand on anything. So this is all this, to quote Shakespeare, sound and fury signifying nothing. It does not actually impact the Israeli, and so the idea that this is what they're willing to disrupt classes over, this is what they want to turn the entire campus into this lawless territory over $277,000, or as they put it, 2 and 3 tuitions. That's the scale of all this at Columbia University. It's really kind of absurd when you think about it. And I think the idea that these students, we just saw in that quote and those clips there, this is just about joining the crowd. This is just about doing what everybody else is doing. This is about, we're angry. Yeah, okay. It's basically a big street party. And or a sign of it's a lot more fun than going to classes now, isn't it? That's a big part of it. Yeah, it's cooler for them than going to class. And so, no, this is ridiculous. Their demands. We had a protester from MIT on a clip of it, not as a guest, obviously. And they wanted divesting. They also wanted a ceasefire, like MIT or the Columbia president is going to be able to issue a proclamation, and Netanyahu's going to go, well, I guess I have no choice now. And then the other thing, of course, that they want is no charges against students for breaking the law. First of all, I would have put that one first. Absolutely amazing. Yeah. So the cluelessness abounds. The righteousness, there's no righteousness to the cause here. Now, as an exit here, I've heard some people on Twitter and elsewhere saying, well, this is odious speech. It's hateful speech, but it's protected speech. And the First Amendment is designed to protect the speech you disagree with most. And while that's true, occupying space illegally, harassing people, like you've mentioned on Twitter, getting in their face, that's not legal. And so I think people are missing the line of distinction here. Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, no one has been arrested for chanting I hate Jews or Juden free or anything like that. It would be terrible and odious to do that, but that by itself is not against the law. If you can determine that it's creating a threat, it's a vaguer, that's a little more of a legal gray area. But mostly what these kids are being arrested for is trespass. You're on private property. You've been told to disperse, and you're not. They've given plenty of warnings. They have all kinds of efforts to negotiate, and eventually they get arrested. I wrote this morning about Pomona College, where they did get everybody arrested. Charges were dropped, much to my annoyance.
I think it would have done these kids some more good to do this. Having said that, having the cops put handcuffs on you and take you downtown and process at you, that's at least a little bit of an inconvenience for them. And I think it generally is, they kind of believe that they had this invisible force field that would protect them from the consequences of their actions because they have this very righteous cause of hating Israel and or Jews. Thus they didn't, nothing could happen to them. And lo and behold, no, that's not the way it works. No one cares about what your beliefs are. The question is, have you violated the law? And if you have, then you have to pay the price for that. So we will see. By the way, the Pomona students, they at least have been barred from campus if they weren't students at that school. And they are suspended. Doesn't sound like they're getting expelled, which I think also might have been an appropriate move. But maybe they believe in a, 2 strikes and you're out philosophy over there. So we'll see how it works out. But there are occasionally some university presidents who, when you take over their office, get a little PO'd and decide, okay, that's it, you're out of here, Buster.
Yeah, most of them, that's not their instinct. They try to give in where they think they can, and then it just gets worse. Then it was Columbia. I think there was over 1,000 professors, or at least personnel from Columbia, that put a ring around the protesters earlier this week to defend the protesters.
Yeah. I mean, my attitude would be, if you've been told to disperse and you're a professor, we could arrest you just as easily. All these people are over 18. You get charged as an adult,
Yeah, you can get all your quality time with your students in the clink, as far as I'm concerned, if you're breaking the law like that. All right, Z-Biotics. Well, if you're watching these protests, you might want to have a stiff drink. But if you do that, make sure that you have Z-Biotics first. Z-Biotics is the pre-alcohol probiotic drink, and it's the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. And it's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Z-Biotics produces an enzyme to break the byproduct down. So just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. One of the guys I work with, I say this all the time, very good at knowing his limits. But as he got older, his mornings were getting rougher. So when we had this opportunity to advertise for Z-Biotics, I gave him some of that, and he said after drinking his normal amount the next morning, felt much, much better. So go to zbiotics.com/3ml to get 15% off your first order when you use 3ml at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantees, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they will refund your money, no questions asked. Visit zbiotics.com/3ml and use the code 3ml at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, Z-Biotics, for sponsoring this episode and our good times.
Don't ever let anyone tell you that having a national debt isn't a problem. The Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski. Every day, Chris helps unpack the connection between politics and the economy and how it affects your wallet. What portion of your dollar that you sent to Uncle Sam is just paying down our national debt? 40%. 40 cents of every dollar is just interest on our spending. Whether it's happening in D.C. or down on Wall Street, it's affecting you financially. Be informed. Check out the Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, Jim, you said the payload on your flight back from Kansas City today could get a little bit complicated due to all the barbecue that you've had over the past few days. And Kansas City really is a lovely city, so I'm glad you had an excellent time there as well. But as it turns out, the left has now decided that if you do eat your weight in barbecue or anything else every single day, that's not a problem. It's because it's a hopeless endeavor to lose weight. Aaron Sabarium from the Free Beacon flagging this story from UCLA Medical School's mandatory health equity class. And it teaches students that weight loss is, in fact, a quote-unquote hopeless endeavor and that obesity is a slur used to exact violence on fat people. Oh, we're not done yet. All first-year students are assigned an essay from a self-described fat liberationist who describes how weight came to be pathologized and medicalized in racialized terms and offers guidance on resisting entrenched fat opposition. Obesity is, in fact, a slur used to exact violence on fat people, particularly, of course, black, disabled, trans, poor fat people, and offers a fat ode to care that students are instructed to analyze, taking note of which sections most resonate with you. And so, Jim, I mean, being obese is a easily documented health threat. It leads to all sorts of potential health problems, but we can't make anybody feel bad about themselves. So therefore, trying to change that fact is hopeless, and anybody pointing out that you're overweight is violence.
Yeah, that was the first thing that jumped out. Was I really wish someone at this seminar or these mandatory indoctrination programs brought a dictionary and look up violence, because I mean, By the way, I want to talk about, if those who are overweight genuinely became a protected class under the law. You talk about arguing against interest. You've always been slim as long as I've known you, Greg. So you have no leg to stand on here. You have no slim, muscular leg to stand on. I've lost a little bit of weight, feeling pretty good about that. But so the idea of weight loss is impossible. No, it's not impossible. It's not easy. Particularly as you get older, your body's metabolism is not as good as it used to be. I have 2 teenagers, and they have lots of teenage friends. And when your young male's body, man, that thing just builds muscle. Gets rid of fat, it just burns calories left and right. They can eat like horses, and none of this or very little of it, turns into fat, although youth obesity rates are up. Now, for a long time, I had this, I was not a fat activist or anything like that, but I did believe that some of the anti-fat movement, Bill Maher used to do lots of jokes about that. And then I think it was like James Corbin who kind of said, those of us who are fat, we know we don't need to be reminded. We don't need to be, we don't need any more mockery. I think there are a lot of people who are like, well, I want to help fat people, so that's why I make fun of them. And like, no, you're not. You're just being mean. You just really want to hurt people's feelings or something like that. So it's a struggle, and I think we should sympathize with these people. I think we all know that, the temptations to eat bad stuff are all around us. Go on a diet, you will suddenly recognize every pizza commercial, every beer commercial, soda commercial, sweets. This country is awash in bakeries. As I mentioned, there's barbecue. Barbecue is not always the healthiest of food. You're getting protein, but there's often a lot of sauce, and the sauce has sugar in it and all that stuff. We went the other day to Andy Reid's favorite place where he gets, burger. Let me say, Andy Reid seems like the kind of guy who knows how to get good barbecue, right? But Andy Reid is also not svelte, shall we say.
Yes.
I hope the guy lives
Correct.
to be 100. Everybody loves him. But so it's just one of those things where the idea of, well, we need to turn fat people into a protected class. No, we don't. We probably want to help them. We want to give them positive encouragement when things are going right. We want to try to help them make good choices instead of bad choices. We want to recognize that, generally carbohydrates is the stuff that turn into fat pretty quickly. But I'm not a doctor. I'm only speaking, consult your doctor for any genuine weight loss or health issues. But generally carbohydrates are the stuff that turn into fat pretty quickly. Proteins, vegetables, all that stuff generally do you more good. And carbohydrates are cheaper. Carbohydrates don't spoil. Carbohydrates are really easy to find everywhere. Fresh fruits and vegetables, fresh meat, more expensive and less like. You generally don't see people walking around eating a turkey drumstick. It's just not, the portable, easy snack food the way chips are or something like that. So when you try to go low carb, you suddenly realize carbohydrates are everywhere. And it would be nice if the medical school wants to have a chat on that, fine. If they want to talk about being sensitive to people who are struggling with it, fine. But the idea that words are violence. Once again, we see the leftist slogan. But my violence is words and communication. Riots are the language of the oppressed. But your words that I don't like hearing, that's violence, and you're not allowed to do that. That's the spiritual equivalent of assault and battery. No, this stuff is nonsense, and you're not doing overweight people any favors by telling them, you need more legal protections and something like that. Look, it's not always easy to control your weight, but all of us have at least some control. Genetics is a factor and stuff like that. But you can make progress, and that should be our message to these people. And this medical school is absolutely botching it.
Boy, Jim, UCLA's got enough problems. They're already having to join the Big Ten now, and they're going to be playing November road games in the upper Midwest, which will be a little bit of a culture shock for them. But this is obviously way worse. Not only is this pure indoctrination, especially once they try to factor in all the racial and trans issues like that, but they're literally encouraging kids to stay in an unhealthy situation. And so it's not only not honest with them, it's downright cruel and downright harmful to them, and that's completely unacceptable. Jim, safe travels to you, and we'll talk again tomorrow.
Talk to you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please subscribe to the podcast if you don't already, and tell your friends about us as well. Also, thank you for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great Thursday, and join us again on Friday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.